What is up, guys? So, coming to you this week, another video. I want to talk about the top 10 light heavyweights. That's 175 pounds. This division really has gotten a lot better over the last year. Some new faces. But it's funny, I say new faces. It's just guys that are, we kind of had to change a regime at the top, because this is the only division of the 12 that I follow exclusively that did not have anybody drop out. All the same guys that were in the top 10 last year are currently in the top 10 this year. So a lot of movement, and I was really happy about that. Moving up and down, but most of the same guys. And a lot of that has to do with just some of the prospects and undefeated guys that are floating around the top 10 didn't really make a splash either. So, but a lot of it has to do with these guys matching up against each other and fighting well against each other. And that, for me, that there's nothing better than that when you have top 10 guys fighting each other and then fighting well against each other and competing against each other. I always think that's a really good thing, and really good for boxing. So let's start with the top 10. We start with number 10, finishing the year number 10, is undefeated contender Marcus Brown. He came into the year number 9, so he drops one spot to 10. He actually was coming off his best win in 2017 when he stopped Sean Moynihan in only 2 rounds. That really elevated him to a top ranking. And then he got a quick win in January over some nobody, a first-round TKO, and actually was lined up to fight Sergey Kovalev in August. He was supposed to be the one fighting Kovalev in August instead of Eleider Alvarez, and he had to bail out of that fight. They picked another opponent because he had multiple domestic violence charges put against him, I think against his girlfriend, that were waged against him during the year. I guess everything smoothed over from that. I'm not sure, but he came back and he got knocked down in an August bout against another kind of nobody, and then ended up getting a 10-round unanimous decision. So so now he's actually got a big fight coming into 2019 on January 19th on Showtime pay-per-view on the Pacquiao-Broner undercard. He's going to be squaring off against Badou Jack. This is the co-feature, so this is basically the second biggest fight of the night, and it's a huge fight. 2 top 10 light heavyweights, and he really gets to prove how good he is against the top 5 light heavyweight, former 2-division world champion, good solid veteran. And Jack, Jack doesn't take fights that he's not confident he can win. And and I think this is going to be a very interesting, very good fight. I'm giving the edge to Jack because he's a veteran, but I really wouldn't be surprised if Brown pulled off the upset here. He's got power, and he can box a little bit. He's undefeated, so he's really stepping it up against Badou Jack. So I can't wait to see this one. January 19th, Showtime pay-per-view. We'll see if he's made for the top 5. Finishing the year, next up at number 9 is Joe Smith Jr. He came into the year originally at number 8, and so he drops one spot to 9th. He was coming off of a broken jaw in a loss in 2017 to Sullivan Barrera. He broke his jaw early in that fight and ended up finishing the fight, going all 10 rounds, losing a decision. So finally, he came back after nearly a year off at the end of June and scored a first-round knockout against some nobody. And then he had a golden opportunity. First, it was against Dimitri Bivol. He wanted to fight Bivol, but Eddie Hearn offered him more money to challenge Artur Beterbiev for the IBF title. So he went after that, and then Beterbiev pulled out of the fight. So really, Joe Smith got screwed this year because he had a chance to fight Bivol for the WBA title, which I think both guys would have preferred that fight. I think Bivol wanted to face a top 10 guy instead of Pascal, like he ended up fighting. But yeah, I was really disappointed in this because I was looking forward to Beterbiev finally getting tested against a hard-hitting fighter like Joe Smith, and Joe Smith would have been getting his first title shot, which would have been big for him. There was talks that this fight could be happening in February. It still hasn't been announced, and we're early in January here, but it still hasn't been announced for February. So I'm hoping by February, March, we see this fight going down, because I think it's a good one. But we just got to wait and see. Better Be have really made himself look scared by not fighting Smith. So Joe Smith's hungry, but he's been inactive. He needs to stay active if the fight with Better Be doesn't go off. He needs to get back in the ring and keep fighting because inactivity's been, it's the last year and a half, he's only fought one round. That's not that good. So he needs to get back in that ring. Dropping one spot from number 7 is the undefeated IBF champion, Arthur Beterbiev. We just talked about Beterbiev. He came into the year, he still had managerial problems, and then, but more to the point, what kept him inactive wasn't necessarily his managerial problems. It was nobody wanted to fight him. I think everybody in the IBF top 15 that was available to fight that didn't have a fight already, everybody passed on a mandatory shot against Beterbiev for the title, to where they had to reshape the IBF rankings. And then undefeated Callum Johnson from the United Kingdom stepped up and said he would fight him. That fight finally came off in October after Beterbiev was out for about 11 months. And and actually a really good fight early on. He knocked Johnson down in the first round, and then Johnson knocked him down in the second round. So that was pretty entertaining. He ended up coming back and knocking Johnson out in the fourth round, though. So pretty entertaining back and forth fight over 4 rounds. And then he had that fight set up for December on the Canelo undercard, and I was pumped for it against Joe Smith, as we just talked about. And then he backs out of the fight and says he needs a couple more months to train, but he has not confirmed that he's going to face Joe Smith. So I really hope he does. He really needs to get tested. He's been banging around here for a few years now. Managerial problems and promotional issues and shit like that have kept him out of the ring. Injuries. Now it's a put up or shut up year. He's a world champion, and he needs to show that he's a world champion. He's got a solid platform now with DAZN, so he needs to seriously fight the best fighters available. No more bullshit from this guy. I really am tired of waiting around for Beterbiev to face somebody good, So we'll see. He should be able to do it, though, because Eddie Hearn, I believe, is going to push him to fight the best this year. Okay, finishing the year number 7 now is former world title challenger Sullivan Barrera. Well, Barrera was coming off of his best year in 2017. I think he went 3-0. He had a big time win over Joe Smith where he broke Joe Smith's jaw. He actually went down in the first round and then broke Joe Smith's jaw in July. He ended up going 3-0 overall in 2017 and became the mandatory challenger for the WBA title. And in March, he cashed in on that mandatory. And, man, he fought as hard as he could. He kept coming at Bivol, but Bivol continuously beat him to the punch and was just better. He outboxed him, outworked him, and ended up knocking Barrera out in the 12th round. So this was a tough loss for Barrera, only the second of his career. But he said, hey, it just didn't work out for him and that he would be back. So, and that ended up being the case. He came back in November, took on Sean Monahan, and got a one-sided unanimous decision. So he's back in the mix. He's just looking to fight whoever. The thing with Barrera, though, is he's up there in age. He's 36. He's dropped 3 spots from number 4. He's shown he can be very competitive, but he needs to get back in the ring. I think going after even Arthur Beterbiev or somebody just to stay busy and get a world title shot would be smart for him. Try to line himself up into an eliminator or something, but we'll see what he can pull off heading into 2019. Finishing the year number 6 is the now former longtime WBC champion, Adonis Superman Stevenson. Man, this guy came into the year, still a lot of criticism for only fighting once a year and fighting nobodies. And he decided to take on Badou Jack. And so with the Jack fight, it ended up being a really good fight, but he won most of the first half of the fight because Jack was saving himself for the second half. And then Jack took over in the second half of the fight. He really did. But Stevenson landed a monster body shot in the 10th round, which I think saved the title for him because he was losing. He lost every round in the second half of the fight except for the 10th when he almost put Jack down with that body shot. Jack hurled over, really looked like he was about to fall from that body shot, and he somehow stayed on his feet. But that was impressive, to pull that off in the 10th right there. And then, the fight ended up going to distance, and it was scored a draw. And then after that, he was mandated to face Alexander Vucic in a, mandatory fight. He had to do it. The WBC wasn't playing around anymore. They would have stripped him if he didn't take that fight. And he decided to face him. And it was actually a really good fight through 10 rounds. I had it 6-4 heading into the 11th. They were going, it wasn't a back and forth kind of fight. It was a kind of change of pace kind of fight. It was, some of the rounds were close, but it was more like who was able to control the round and land the better shots. And it looked like towards the middle rounds, heading in late in the fight, that Vucic had taken over the fight and was wearing down Stevenson. And Stevenson out of nowhere landed a monster left hand that almost put Vucic down. And then he landed an uppercut that almost put him down again. Somehow Vucic stayed on his feet and kept fighting and actually closed the round out good. And then in the 11th, he just poured it on Stevenson, who just seemed like that was his last effort right there. And he just poured it on him and dominated him and ended up knocking him out with a brutal right hand in the 11th round. And Stevenson sadly got put in a coma after that because he had bleeding on the brain. Stevenson, that's what his fiance said, that he's out of learning how to re-talk again. It's not like he doesn't know how to talk. He just, right now, he's having trouble speaking. So, but they do say that he's conscious and he's doing a lot better, which is good. But at the age of 41 now, and after a knockout like that, I wanted to drop. Sure, he's done boxing, but pushed by 2 top 5 guys, and really showed a lot of heart that I didn't think was there because of all the dancing around a Kovalev showdown, but that never happened and stuff. And I just really got to tip my hat off to Adonis Stevenson. He really fought like a stud in 2018, and really impressed me, and showed that he's a top level fighter even at the age of 41. And it makes you wonder what he could have done, if some of those matchups could have happened. But all in all, I'm just glad that the guy's out of the. And until that happens, I'm going to keep him ranked because he deserves it. For me, it's a sign of respect. Even though did in 2018 total against Jack and Vucic, matter of seconds, minutes, because just a few minutes later he's getting put down and hard and knocked out after almost knocking his opponent out. So crazy. That's boxing for you, but crazy. But my hat's off to you, Superman. You were great in 2018. The best year, even though you went down, it was the best year of fighting I've seen you do, and I was just really proud to have been able to see it, both fights. Okay, so finishing the year number 5 now is undefeated WBA champion Dimitri Bivol. He came into the year actually ranked 10th and moved up big in March. He had become world champion kind of by default because he was the interim champ, and then Badu Jack gave up the title. So by default, he got handed the WBA title pretty much. And heading into 2018, he really had to make a name for himself, and he had a chance early. He took on Sullivan Barrera, who was his mandatory number 1 contender, and was actually a top 5 guy when they fought, and is still a top 10. He stripped apart and dominated Barrera in one of the best title defenses of the year. It actually was one of my finalists. That was one of the, just a pure boxing performance. He dominated, counterpunched, aggressive, power, speed, everything, and had a great, and ended up finishing him too. I thought the fight was going to distance for sure, and he got a 12th round knockout. Very impressive. Then he came back in, I believe it was August, on the Kovalev Alvarez undercard, and took on Isaac Chilemba, solid veteran. And Chilemba's at that age though to where I think he should be knocked out, even though he's always been a tough guy to get knocked out. Even Kovalev didn't knock him out. a couple years ago. But, so I wasn't too upset that he didn't knock him out. I just wish he would have been a little more aggressive. He ended up getting a one-sided decision, though. And then in November, he had Joe Smith lined up to defend the title against. And Joe Smith ended up moving on to try to challenge Beterbiev and make more money. So Bivol didn't want to waste the defense, so he ended up taking on 39-year-old former world champion Jean Pascal. And this was the one that disappointed me about Bivol because, God, it just no aggressiveness in this fight. I mean, he won pretty much every round, but Pascal's 39. He's been knocked out before. I mean, I just think he should have put his foot on the gas pedal. I don't know if he was trying to do Pascal a favor and, be nice. And, okay, I guess I get that to an extent because he's an old man. But, damn, I don't know. It just didn't do much for me, that performance. I wasn't impressed, and it was just whatever. So I really hope he brings a new fire to 2019. He's undecided, but he said he's going to be deciding soon. He's going to be announcing his next title defense soon, and then he's going to be announcing which network he's going to be fighting for, whether it be ESPN or DAZN, or even Showtime in the PBC. So we'll see what happens. I do like Bivol. I was impressed with the performance against Barrera, and it shows that he's undefeated and got a lot of skill. But we got to wait and see what happens. I think it's, his last performance made me really doubt if he's the top guy in the division. So we'll see. This is the year to prove it. Finishing the year number 4 is former 2-division world champion Badou Jack. Now, Badou Jack entered the year. He actually came into the year ranked 3rd, so he drops one spot. But that's only because he fought one time. Jack, his problem is he takes about 8 months off in between fights. Sometimes, yeah, and he does that almost consistently. I've kind of clocked it, and that's pretty much what he does. It was 8 months in between the Cleverly to Stevenson fight, and now the Stevenson to his next fight is going to be 8 months. But they're always pretty good, solid fights. He was entering the year coming off of a big win where he kind of stole the show and dominated Nathan Cleverly on the Mayweather-McGregor undercard and captured the light heavyweight title, but he gave that up to move on and challenge Stevenson for the WBC title. This was a great fight. Some people felt he won. I thought he gave away too many of the early rounds, the first half of the fight, and then he turned it up in the second half, and he almost went down and got hit hard with body shots in the 10th round, and I think that's what scored it a draw. It was very close, and I think a draw was the right call. Like I said, a lot of people thought he won, though. He didn't do anything the rest of the year after that fight, but now he has announced his next fight for the Pacquiao-Broner undercard. He's going to be returning to challenge for the interim title against Marcus Brown, and he has said that he's willing to fight anybody now. So he said he'll fight Bivol now. Maybe he's seen some things in Bivol that are not impressive to him, and he's fighting to become the interim champion to a title that Bivol holds. So we'll see. We'll see if how good he is. We'll see if he can beat Marcus Brown. I'm giving him the edge here, but Brown has the youth, and Jack's 35, but he really maintains great shape. He trains well, and he hasn't worn himself out with fight after fight. That's the one thing about the 8-month layoff in between fights. It's really benefited him because he doesn't, wear himself out fighting every 4 or 5 months and 3 times a year. So we'll see. It's going to be a good one. I got him winning a decision, possibly a late stoppage. It should be a good one. January 19th, Showtime pay-per-view. A win is going to guarantee him a world title shot. So we'll see. We'll see how he does. Finishing the year 3rd is former 2-time light heavyweight champion Sergey Kovalev. Kovalev, he came into the year pretty much at the top of the division. He was number 1 for me starting the year. He was coming off a loss in 17 against Andre Ward, but he came back months later and captured a vacant world title, becoming a 2-time champ. He defended it against some southpaw, I forget the guy's name, Igor Mikhalkin. And, it was kind of Mikhalkin wasn't too big on exchanging, so it took Kovalev a little longer than expected, but He got a 7th round TKO and got out of there. Then in August, he was supposed to face Marcus Brown. Marcus Brown had domestic violence issues, so Kovalev came back instead against Eliter Alvarez, undefeated contender, and he was winning the fight, but he was getting hit with some good shots pretty much the whole fight, but he was winning on points. It looked like he had started to take over the fight, and then in the 7th round, he got caught with a wicked overhand right, put him down hard. He could not recover. He got put down 2 more times, and then the ref finally stopped the fight after the 3rd knockdown, and he lost his world title in a big-time upset. Now Kovalev's 35. He has a mandatory rematch. It's set February 2nd in a main event of an ESPN card. This is last hurrah. If he loses this one, it's probably retirement for Kovalev. I got him winning, but I wouldn't be surprised if he loses in the rematch. We got to wait and see. Going to be a good one. February 2nd, ESPN. And he's still the big top dog in the division. If he wins, he's got all the fights coming his way again. So we'll see. Finishing the year number 2 is undefeated WBC champion Alexander Volcik. Volcik came in the year, with a lot of questions, but he was rolling over his opponents, and it looked like he was really going to make an impression. He fought for the vacant interim title in March, and he kind of got a lackluster 12-round unanimous decision, so a lot of people kind of put him on the back burner again and weren't giving him a lot of love, but he had a guaranteed WBC title shot in his future, and he cashed in on that in December when he took on Adonis Superman Stevenson. And he fought well. He was patient in the fight. He boxed and threw his jabs and had a lot of good counter right hands. And he just waited it out and wore Stevenson down. He lost some of the early rounds. It was close and pretty much even after the first half of the fight. Then he took over in the middle rounds, started to wear him down. He had a scare in the 10th, almost got knocked out against Stevenson twice. But he stayed on his feet, closed out strong, and then the 11th just poured it on Stevenson. Brutal right-hand knockout, and became the world champion. So, big-time win. He's fights out of ESPN, so he's got a crack. He could have a crack at the winner of Alvarez and Kovalev, the rematch, or even there's been talks about him possibly facing light heavyweight champ, super middleweight champ Gilberto Ramirez. So he's got to wait and see, but it should be good. And then finishing the year number 1 now is the undefeated WBO light heavyweight champ Eliter Alvarez. This guy, he may be the most patient guy in boxing. He took the WBC title, but he got so frustrated that he instead went after Kovalev in August. He took a title fight against Kovalev after Marcus Brown bailed out, and that ended up being the smartest thing he ever did, because in the fight with Kovalev, he was landing good shots, but he was losing on the cards heading into the 7th, and then crack. He landed an overhand right, scored 2 more knockdowns. They called the fight after the 3rd. Great performance by him, and he became the world champ. Now, he's a mandatory rematch with Kovalev is taking place February 2nd in the main event of an ESPN card. He's already signed with Top Rank and ESPN, so we're going to see what Alvarez is really made of. It's going to be a good fight. I got Kovalev winning a rematch, but the way Alvarez fought the first fight, and with Kovalev getting older, I really wouldn't be surprised if he wins, but he's only 34. He is 34, so he's up there in age. So we got to see what happens. But you know what, guys? A lot of guys have good platforms at light heavyweight. Alvarez is now with Top Rank and ESPN. Volcik is ESPN. Kovalev is kind of wide open. We don't know if he's going to do ESPN or DAZN yet. We'll see after this fight and if he wins. But he's always going to get a good platform. Badu Jack's PBC and Showtime. Dimitri Bivol, he's still yet to decide, but he's going to pick ESPN or DAZN most likely. Stevenson, if he does come back, is Showtime and PBC. Sullivan Barrera fought on the Golden Boy his last time on Facebook Watch, so he should get a platform. Better Beals with DAZN. Joe Smith will get a platform most likely, and Marcus Brown's with PBC. So a lot of good fights here, guys. Make sure you're checking them out and paying attention. So that's it. I will come back either this afternoon or tomorrow morning with the lightweights. And we only got 4 more divisions to do: lightweight, heavyweight, middleweight, and then welterweight. All right, guys, have a good rest.